How likely is it for China to launch an invasion of Taiwan? The gentle people of Ilha Formosa, or the Beautiful Island as Portuguese sailors used to call Taiwan, have been bracing themselves for an imminent attack from China for decades. They hold the nationwide annual Wan-An air raid drill to prepare civilians and minimize casualties in case of a Chinese missile attack. But after seeing recent news about China's beefing up their missile bases in the southern coastline, how likely is it for China to pull out all the stops and go on an all-out war to annex the small Asian island? Join us in today's video as we analyze the events of the past couple of months that have raised more than one red flag. These events point to a frightening scenario that could unleash the next world war by immediately dragging multiple nations into one of the worst armed conflicts in Asia in modern-day history. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more videos. A timeline of rising tensions. How exactly did we get to this point? Why precisely now, in the middle of one of the worst international crises to hit the world since World War II, does China seem to be at the brink of invading Taiwan amidst a global pandemic? China's intentions are nothing new, and the story goes back 7 decades. However, certain actions taken by the Trump administration have brought things to nearly a breaking point, and China has been threatening Taiwan by force ever since. Let's go over the key moments in history that have shaped Taiwan and China's international relations in order to better understand today's conundrum. 1949, the end of the Chinese Civil War. Everything started right in the middle of the past century, when the Communists won the Civil War and the Kuomintang, KMT, a nationalist and Republican party, fled to Taiwan and established themselves there. 1950, Taiwan-U.S. alliance. The following year, the United States formed an alliance with the KMT because we were at war in North Korea with the Chinese Communists. 1971, Taiwan is kicked out of the United Nations. A sour hit in the gut of the Taiwanese government came when the Chinese convinced the United Nations that Taiwan was a province of China, not an independent country, and therefore had no place in the international organization. This means that for the past 50 years, Taiwan hasn't been a member of the UN, which is an interesting fact about Taiwan that few people know. By the way, if you want to learn more surprising facts about the Butterfly Kingdom, make sure to keep watching until the very end, where we have a surprise in store for you. 1987 to 2005. Relations improve, then go bad, then improve again. During this period, the Taiwanese are allowed to visit China. Trade between the two nations gets a boost, and both governments begin peace talks. Those talks end abruptly when the Taiwanese president visits the U.S. in 1995, and tensions rise during the 1996 elections when China performs missile tests off Taiwan's coast as an attempt to dissuade voters. 2005. China makes Taiwan secession illegal. This is when the true beginning of the recent crisis takes place. In March 2005, China passes a law that makes Taiwan secession illegal. The law contemplates the use of military force if need be in order to keep the Chinese territories whole and inseparable. 2016, the year things really start to go downhill. Between 2008 and 2016, Taiwan's pro-Beijing KMT party had been in power and slowly but steadily giving ground to China by allowing the island to become economically dependent on the mainland. However, in the 2016 election, the pro-independence female president Tsai Ing-wen was elected in a landslide victory that put an end to the island's submissive attitude towards Beijing, and Xi Jinping didn't like it one bit. As a matter of fact, China's government closed all communications with the island shortly after the election because the new government wouldn't admit to a tacit One China policy that had been in effect ever since the UN booted Taiwan, formerly known as the Republic of China. Things have been tense ever since. But things quickly started getting a lot worse, especially once the Trump administration disregarded Xi Jinping's protests and started communicating with Taiwan, ultimately cutting an arms deal in 2017. Washington took things even further by passing laws to improve ties with the Asian island nation, and even sold them F-16s and spare parts to enhance the island's air force between 2018 and 2020. Add the trade war between Beijing and Washington, accusations of espionage, and the blame game over the COVID-19 pandemic to the mix, and you have a Cold War in the making, with the Taiwan affairs being the catalyst that could turn it red hot. Things are so bad, in fact, that it was one of the key issues discussed during the last virtual UN General Assembly in September 2020, second only to the COVID-19 pandemic. Many countries are worried about a second Cold War, this time between the United States and China, and one that could have a far worse ending than the one with the Soviet Union. Why would China invade Taiwan now if they haven't done it in over 70 years? Chinese President Xi Jinping has repeatedly stated that the reunification of Taiwan with mainland China is imminent and that he will use military force if necessary. But he said that before, so what's different this time around? While this may not have been a real threat in the past, it is today. Should the current president of Taiwan decide to make a formal declaration of independence, China is left with only one of two options. It can pretend it didn't happen and keep going about its business as usual, as it's done countless times already under similar circumstances, or it can decide to invade with its military. It's easy to see that it would be in everyone's best interest for China to choose the first of the two options. So why wouldn't they just do that this time around as it had been done before? What's different now? The answer to that is quite simple. In the past, China could count on the fact that the only step Taiwan was likely to be recognized by the international community as an independent nation, even though in practice it already is, was for its head of state to make a declaration of independence. While this would be enough for China to justify an invasion, it's obvious that an empty wish for declaration by Taiwan's independence-leaning party hasn't worked, which is shown by the fact that most nations around the world still don't officially acknowledge Taiwan as a country. If Taiwan really wanted to be recognized and consolidate its official independence, it would have to call for a national referendum, and through democracy, have its own people yell out to the world that they don't belong to China. While this wasn't likely under the Beijing-friendly KMT government, which lost power in 2016, it is likely now, as Taiwanese people put a pro-independence president in office through a democratic and direct election. There's no way that China would risk waiting for Taiwan's president Tsai Ing-wen pulling off a referendum like that. Whether or not Taipei is already planning such a referendum, fact is that China seems to be prepping for the invasion as we speak, as we'll explain in just a second. Evidence that plans for the invasion could be well underway. What spurred the recent news that China could be preparing to invade the Asian island nation is a series of alarming reports in the region. Let's cover them one at a time. Number 1. Satellite images report military maneuvers and concentration of forces near the coast of the Taiwan Strait in the Guangdong province. They're apparently beefing up their DF-17 missile base and deployed their S-400 Triumph air defense system. Number 2. The Chinese President Xi instructed his troops to remain on high alert and to prepare for war. Number 3. Chinese bombers and other military aircraft have been intercepted in Taiwanese airspace by Taiwanese fighter jets countless times in the last couple of months. Number 4. China released video footage of military exercises inside China's military bases demonstrating war games of the People's Liberation Army invading Taiwan and securing key government buildings across Taiwan. What would be the aftermath of a Chinese invasion? Assuming that China was to go all the way and invade Taiwan, there are a number of possible outcomes. If Taipei plays its cards right and manages to retain a good part of its military and defense systems in operation after the first strike, they could buy enough time for foreign forces to come to the rescue. In other words, for the United States and its regional allies Japan and Australia to step in. The big question is, would these nations answer the call? The reason we don't know the answer to that question is that there is a diplomatic ambiguity when it comes to international relations with Taiwan. While the US is committed to providing weapons and defense systems to the island, there is no written commitment to defend it in the case of a Chinese invasion. The US Congress is trying to pass a bill to ensure that any future president would be obliged to respond in the case this happens, presenting a clear position of what would happen if China invaded. Until that bill is approved, the mere threat of it could push China into action ahead of time. If the US does decide to step in, then the military would use its submarines in the area, as well as the nearby aircraft carriers to fight off the attack. But things could easily escalate if we were to do that. China could potentially retaliate by attacking our military bases in Guam and Okinawa, triggering another retaliation from Washington. All of this could play out horribly, and that's without either side escalating the conflict into an all-out nuclear war. Do you think Taiwan is an independent nation that deserves the world's recognition? Or do you think that the Chinese have a valid claim over the island and are entitled to do whatever necessary to take it by force, regardless of what the Taiwanese people think? Do you think they're likely to invade even if Taiwan is a US ally? Share your thoughts in the comments section below and join the discussion. While you're at it, remember to share, like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for future videos. Finally, if you want to learn more about Taiwan, its people, and their culture, make sure to check out this video that's popping up on your screen right now. You'll find more than one fact that make the Taiwanese completely different from the Chinese, and others that'll make you add the island to your own bucket list to visit. Thanks for watching.